Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome to the finale of my Terminator franchise review. And today, of course, there will be no beating around the bush with this one. Today, we will be discussing the highly controversial and highly divisive final, at the moment, installment of the Terminator franchise, Terminator Dark Fate, released in 2019. Of course, joining me today is Trevor Thomson from good old Fictosphere. Make yourself known.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be here again.
Now, hopefully you guys can hear him well, because I actually kind of have a reverse setup for what I used to do with my old videos, where I would have that phone stand attached to my table, and I would have my phone be recording me while I was streaming, and I would have my guest on my laptop. But here I have it reverse. Trevor's on my phone, and I'm streaming from my laptop, of course. So hopefully you guys can hear him very well. Let's see. Get that up. All right, so Terminator Dark Fate, like I said, is a very divisive installment of the Terminator franchise. We're not going to get into why as of right now, at least the main reason why it's divisive. But obviously, both of us have the least amount of nostalgia for Dark Fate because it's the most recent film. But what was your reaction leading up to this movie's release, Trev?
Okay, so at first I was a bit bummed that Genesis was not going to be going anywhere. And then they announced this, and the first thing I thought was, well, they're going to just keep on trying to do this alternate Terminator 3 thing until they, I guess, get some good results. This kind of had me starting to realize that James Cameron is somebody that I probably want to work with. I think he's a very talented director and everything, but based on how he reacted to Genesis and then this, he kind of threw people under the bus after he supposedly gave them his seal of approval, you know?
Which is ironic, because I remember back when Terminator 3 was coming out, everybody was hating on the film, but of all the people who defended T3, one of them was James Cameron himself. But whatever. Oh, and by the way, so since this is the final Terminator review, at least until if I ever get around to reviewing Sarah Connor Chronicles, I figure I may as well celebrate the occasion by showing off my brand new silver skull mug. Since TA100 units have silver skulls, I think it's kind of fitting.
Oh, I definitely want to see that.
Refreshing. Anyway, so continue.
Okay, so anyway, I knew things were probably going to be pretty toxic whenever they started pushing the pretty much woke agenda with this movie. But I was still going to give it a chance, and I'm glad that I did because, like with any of these movies, I go and see it, and as a fan who's open to more chapters, I was pleasantly surprised for the most part.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. So I didn't really hold out for another. It's weird with the Terminator franchise. I don't really. I mean, of course, I want more Terminator stuff, but I'm not like one of those people that is constantly searching for any signs of another installment being made. I'm like, whenever a new movie comes out, I get my fix, and then I'm good. That's how I was with Salvation, and that's how I was with Genesis. So when it was announced, new Terminator movie on the way, I was like, great, awesome. When? 2019. Great. Looking forward to it. So I didn't really follow the production all that much because I just kind of wanted to be kind of calm about it and like just save all the good stuff for when I get around to seeing the movie. Though, of course, I did find out about a couple things. And also, kind of like Trev, I was a little disappointed that it wasn't a follow-up to Genesis. But it was announced like not long after Genesis came out that plans for the next trilogy were canned. But then when it was announced that Dark Fate was going to be a direct sequel to Terminator 2, that got me really excited because obviously, it's picking up on the trend of sequels being made to 80s films being made 40 years later. So I was really excited. So I was like, okay, maybe finally they can get the Terminator franchise the kick in the ass that it kind of needs, and we can now have something to look forward to on a semi-regular basis. And then it was announced that Linda Hamilton was coming back, and I was really excited for that. I was like, okay, now it kind of seems like they're starting to get a lot of stuff together to create or to catch the same lightning in a bottle for a third time. And then I was really on board when it was announced, of course, that Arnold was once again returning. So after that, I was excited. I was very, very, very excited for Dark Fate. I don't really remember how I reacted to the title of the film. Sure. But I was like, okay, Dark Fate, that's not a bad title. It could be kind of it could tie into a theme of no matter what you do, the future will always be set, or something like that. Like humanity will always have a dark fate in mind with the machines.
Or Judgment Day leads to a dark fate.
Or yeah, that too. And then the trailers started dropping, and then also another thing, when it was announced that the film would be R-rated once again. Pardon my wife in the background. I was really excited for that too, because that's another thing that I've always felt was missing ever since Terminator 3 was the R-rated tone. This movie was directed by the same guy who directed Deadpool, Tim Miller. I literally told you that 3 or 4 times.
You literally tell me 1,000 things every day. It's hard to remember everything.
Anyway, so yeah, this film was directed by Tim Miller. And while I haven't seen any other movies that Tim Miller has done other than the Deadpool films, I said, all right, well, making Terminator like over-the-top violent as Deadpool, I'm in. Sure. So yeah, I was in. So I was really excited. And then especially when the trailers started dropping, I watched the first trailer that dropped where it was like really slow and creepy and quiet with that song that said, I'm going hunting. So I watched it. I was like, okay, this looks good. This looks really good. And then the film came out, and then I started hearing word of mouth stuff, and that got me a little spooked. I was going to see this film in theaters, but I got scared away because of something that happens that Trev and I are going to talk about. Not going to say what it is, but if you've seen the film, you can kind of guess as to what it is. So, and then the film just got a total thrashing, and people everywhere were like, I heard some people say this is one of the worst movies of 2019, to which I miserably disagree with. And then, unfortunately, the movie was a financial failure. It made only $261 million against a $185 to $196 million budget, which I'm pretty sure is the lowest grossing Terminator film of the entire series. Maybe.
Or none, probably.
Maybe. I'm not entirely sure. Like, I don't remember how much the first film was a success for the 80s, but adjusted for inflation, I'm sure it'd be worth a lot more. But of the modern Terminator films, I think this was the lowest grossing of the entire series. And then, so seemingly, unfortunately, a lot of the cast members have come out to say the Terminator franchise is dead, which is really disappointing. And like Trev said, I noticed too that they were kind of really pushing the woke. I don't know what the fuck that means. Go woke or go broke agenda with this film, and that got me spooked. I was like, oh no, the Captain Marvel cancer spores are starting to leak into one of my favorite franchises. Please, no, don't doom it. And unfortunately, it's been doomed. But then I actually got around to watching the film. I wasn't disappointed. I was entertained. I think this is a good movie. I think it's a very, very, very well-made film. It's got a lot of good things going for it. But I remember back when Trev and I were first talking about doing this series together, and I asked him, hey, is there any movies that you'd like to review with me? And one of them, he said, was Dark Fate. And I said, oh, please don't tell me you hate it. And you told me no. And I remember saying to him, it's not a bad movie. It's just misguided. And I think that perfectly sums up exactly how this movie is. It's very misguided. And as much as I like this film's R-rated tone, I kind of don't think that Tim Miller should have directed this film. And a lot of cast and crew members should not have been involved with this film at all, because there's elements of this film that make it a perfect Terminator movie, and then there's other elements of this movie that just make it a completely god-awful, facepalm, cringe-inducing splatterfest. So, with all that being said, let's get into the plot of Terminator Dark Fate. So, the film begins in 1998, 3 years after averting the threat of Skynet. Sarah and John Connor are enjoying life by a beach in Livingston, Guatemala, when they are suddenly attacked by a T-800 Terminator. One of the several went back through time by Skynet prior to its erasure. The T-800 proceeds to gun down John before leaving. We'll get back to that later. In 2020, an advanced Terminator unit known as the Rev 9 is sent back in time to Mexico City to murder Daniela Danny Ramos, who will become a threat to the machines in the future. Meanwhile, a cybernetically enhanced soldier named Grace is sent from 2042 to protect her. The Rev 9, disguised as Danny's father, infiltrates the automobile assembly plant where Danny and her brother Diego work, but is thwarted by Grace, who escapes with the siblings. The Rev 9, revealing its ability to split into its cybernetic endoskeleton and shape-shifting liquid metal exterior, pursues them, kills Diego, and corners Grace and Danny. However, Sarah shows up and temporarily disables the Terminator with explosives, like a fucking badass. Danny, Grace, and Sarah retreat to a motel, and Sarah reveals that she found them because in the years since John's death, she has received encrypted messages detailing the locations of arriving Terminators, each ending for John. Sarah has used these messages to hunt down and destroy each Terminator, and Grace notes that neither Skynet nor John exist in her timeline. Instead, humanity is threatened by an AI called Legion, which is really on the nose. Originally developed for cyber warfare. Yeah, it's just like Sarah says in the movie. Those assholes never learn. When Legion became a threat to humans, an attempt was made to neutralize it with nuclear weapons, which resulted in a nuclear holocaust and the AI creating a global network of machines to terminate the human survivors. Grace traces Sarah's messages to Laredo, Texas. Or is it Laredo? You're a Texan, Trev. How do you pronounce it?
It'd be Laredo.
Laredo? Okay. Barely evading the Rev 9 and the authorities while crossing the Mexico-U.S. border, they arrive at their source where they discover the same T-800 that murdered John, of course, once again played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Having fulfilled its mission and with Skynet no longer existing, the T-800 was left aimless. Through learning, however, it became self-aware and developed an equivalent to a consciousness. During that time, it learned from humanity and took the name Carl and adopted a human family. After learning how its actions affected Sarah and being able to detect temporal displacements, somehow, Carl decided to forewarn her of them to give her purpose, thereby attempts to make amends. Carl offers to join them against the Rev 9, and they make preparations to destroy it. Sarah begrudgingly agrees to work together for Danny's sake, and anticipating the Rev 9's arrival, Carl bids his family farewell and tells them to escape. The group gives Danny brief tactical weapons training and plans on how to ambush the Rev 9. To do so, they seek out a military-grade electromagnetic pulse from an acquaintance of Sarah's. The Rev 9 catches up and forces them to steal a C-5 Galaxy plane to escape, though the EMPs are destroyed in the resulting shootout. During the flight, Grace reveals that Danny becomes the future founding commander of the Resistance as well as her rescuer. The Rev 9 boards their airplane via a KC-10 extender and temporarily subdues Carl, forcing Grace, Sarah, and Danny to jump from the plane into a river near a hydropower plant, with Carl and the Rev 9 following close behind. Bludgeoned, the group makes their stand inside the plant, and in the ensuing battle, Carl and Grace force the Rev 9 into a spinning turbine, causing an explosion that critically damages the two Terminators and mortally wounds Grace. The blemished Rev 9's endoskeleton incapacitates Sarah and forces Danny to cringe-inducingly confront it herself. A dying Grace tells Danny to use her own power source to destroy the Rev 9, and again, very cringe-inducingly Danny tries to fight off the Rev 9, but, as expected, she's quickly overpowered. Carl reactivates himself and restrains the Rev 9 and allows Danny to stab it with Grace's power source. Carl drags himself and the Rev 9 over a ledge, and as the Rev 9 starts to fry and his skin starts to catch fire, he looks up to Sarah and says, "For John," right before the power core explodes and destroys them both in the process. Sometime later, Danny and Sarah watch over a 10-year-old Grace at a playground with her family. The former is determined to avert Grace's death and Legion's rise. Sarah then tells Danny she needs to get ready, with Grace watching as the pair driving off into the sunset that seemingly ends this entire franchise, unfortunately. So, Trev, what do you think of this movie story?
Well, there's a lot of good, but there are points where it dips and lingers in places that it shouldn't.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Anything else?
So I also wanted to mention, based on your intro, Tim Miller is probably most well known, aside from Deadpool, for directing video game cinematics. So there's that.
That explains a lot.
Yeah. Going on about how you laid out all those elements, I mean, a lot of those, the cast and what they were trying to go for in general, sounds really good.
It sounds good on paper. It's just the execution that's just kind of half botched.
Indeed, and once we get to the cons, we'll elaborate on that.
Mm-hmm. But let's get into the pros first, because there are a lot of good things to say about this film. Let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many do you have?
I have 4, but again, they can go off into multiple layers.
Go right ahead.
All right. So number 1, and this struck me from the very first piece of action, is that the action in this movie is very visceral.
Very.
But then again, that's because this was the first R-rated Terminator movie since 3, and 3 was kind of diminished by, I guess, its comedic aspects.
I wouldn't say that, but
well, not 100%, but I don't know. There was just something about this whenever I first saw that scene in the factory where I was like, damn, we haven't seen Terminator action like this in a long time.
Yeah, I think you kind of have something there. You might be kind of right, but go ahead.
I mean, I was just hanging on every little bit. I mean, there were these great touches, and it just, I was pretty much on the edge of my seat, and I was like, wow, this is a great feeling to have for Terminator. I mean, as much as I like Genesis, we got into how that movie basically being sanitized kind of diminishes what impact it might have had, but this definitely kicked it up a notch.
Yeah, I'd agree. It does help that this movie, like we said with Salvation, has the second biggest budget of the whole series.
Oh, that's true, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, do you want me to? Well, maybe we can get into it later, but I actually noticed some interesting parallels between this and Salvation, which is funny because these are both like your least favorite in the franchise, right?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I'm curious.
Yeah, so number 1 is that they have kind of a similar visual aesthetic going on. There's a lot of brown and yellow and then some gray monochrome colors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like you could call this is what Salvation would have looked like if it did retain its R rating, if it had one in the first place.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assessment.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I think one related to Sarah I can save whenever I get to it because it is on my pros. But, the whole thing with Grace is very similar to Marcus in a way. Really, she's a new Kyle Reese by way of Marcus, kind of.
Yeah, for better or for worse, depending on your viewpoint.
Yeah. Well, and since I brought her up, I might as well go ahead and mention it. There's also a bit of a pissing contest going on between Sarah and Grace, and it kind of reminds me of what was going on with John and Marcus in Salvation.
Maybe superficially to me, but I don't quite.
I mean, not like 100%.
I can kind of see it, but I think that, well, obviously, it's 2 chicks versus 2 dudes. But, yeah. I mean, it's kind of similar. It's kind of similar, but I don't think it's 100% similar. If that makes any sense.
What really made it a point, what pointed out to me was the fact that it seems like they're fighting over what should be done with who they're charged with protecting. In Salvation, they're trying to protect Kyle, and in this one, they're trying to protect Danny. So that's what kind of reminds me. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. You make a point. You make a good point.
And there was one other thing. I'll probably, I'll bring that up when we get to the cons because I think Salvation did this better. For one thing, there's only a superficial similarity between them. But yeah, I'll save that for the cons. So yeah. Anyway, the action in this movie, especially the final battle inside the dam, I loved the way they teamed up on the Rev 9.
Oh yeah. No, poor Carl. He
There was-
just keeps whenever he gets up, he's like King Kong and King Kong versus Godzilla. He just keeps getting put right back down.
I mean, he's missing a fucking arm. He's, you know, having his joints and everything, but he's still really the muscle in that group.
Mhm.
I mean, Sarah's firing off these slugs from the shotgun, and Grace is really the most agile and speedy of the three of them.
Mhm.
But it's the combined effort, and they just really
Try their best.
What was that?
They try as hard as they can to take down this fucker.
I mean, and you feel it too, and you're just like, come on, get the motherfucker. You're almost there.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. Yeah. Continue.
And then, and before that, there's the zero gravity action scene, which was also impressive. But really, that first scene in the factory, and then the final battle in the the dam. They
oh, I know what you're talking about. Okay, gotcha. The fight in the plane.
Yeah. I mean, they're all great, and really, the action in this movie is probably what immediately impressed me whenever I first saw it.
Fair enough. Yeah, me too. Save my thoughts on the action scenes, but agreed.
Yeah. And it's funny because, you know, I've kind of not really mentioned the action in my pros for the previous two reviews we did. And I mean, the action is good in those movies, but this one, I just felt that I needed to mention it because it's definitely a highlight for me.
All right, fair enough. Number two.
So for number 2?
Yeah.
The Rev 9. I really like this guy.
Played by, I should have mentioned this when I was talking about the plot, played by Gabriel Luna. Haven't seen him in... Go ahead.
Who played Ghost Rider on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, and was probably the best thing about the 4th season.
Did he really?
He did, yeah. It seems like he's starting to have this reputation for playing things with notable skulls.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So, yeah, anyway, what I really like about the Rev 9, aside from the way that he looks, I like how there's like this black, his liquid metal component is black instead of silver. And his endoskeleton is, actually it's also a deep, black color.
It's like a gunmetal grayish color.
But yeah, exactly. But really what I like, if you view this movie as a whole as the proper, quote unquote, Terminator 3, it's a logical evolution from the first two movies that you would combine the endoskeleton concept with the liquid metal.
Yeah. Though
which they did.
Kind of is a minor... There is a minor criticism that I have for the Rev 9, but since T3 isn't in this film's timeline, it's kind of rendered moot, but I just kind of see it as a missed opportunity. But I'll get back to that later.
Oh, I can see that. And, seeing how I didn't get to say anything about T3 in this little series, it did occur to me, Genesis explored the idea of Skynet giving itself a body. Well, I thought it would have been a really neat idea for Skynet to put itself into the TX model. And basically it would fulfill a sort of Queen Terminator role.
Yeah, that would have been kind of cool.
Just one of those, fan fiction-y kind of things that I cooked up.
But continue.
But yeah, so really, aside from how he's portrayed, I just like how it's just logical that this would.
Oh, okay.
It's just logical that this would be the progression from the first two movies if you're going along with the logic that this is the, again, quote unquote, proper third movie. And I also like that it seems like there's this trait with the Paramount Terminator movies, being this and Genesis, that their main villain Terminators have a bit of charisma to them. Not as much as the T-3000 in Genesis, but yeah. But there's definitely, the Rev 9 is probably, if you consider all the different Terminators in the franchise, he's probably
the most sadistic.
Well, that too, but he also does the best. We've mentioned thinking on their feet more than once with these three movies, mostly in relation to Kyle and Marcus. But this Terminator definitely does a good job blending in. He adapts to the situation really, really quickly.
Yeah, he adopts a Texan accent after the characters escape the detainee center.
Yeah, which I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be derogatory or not, like they were trying to say something about Texan border control or whatever, but I digress.
Fair enough.
Again, it's all part of the whole blending in thing. Each time he realized that he needed to adjust something in order to, effectively blend in, he did it. Like when he first arrives, he's speaking only Espanol because the only people around him are mostly Mexicans,
Mm-hmm.
And then you brought up how he adjusted his accent for whenever he was at the detainee camp.
And he also morphed into a female in order to, when he first infiltrated the detainee camp, he morphed into a female officer. I guess to kind of catch the guys off guard because, of course, they're going to be like that when a girl is around.
Yeah. And there's funny, he's very, I don't want to keep on saying charismatic, but there's funny little things that he says which are kind of a hint as to his effectiveness. Like, he has to get rid of his gun whenever he's, first arriving at the detainee camp. And then he says, well, my whole body's a weapon, which is true because he really doesn't need that gun because he can just, form, bladed weapons.
I also like how when it still goes off, the first thing that he says in order to throw people off his scent, well, I served in the military. I got a metal hip.
Yeah, exactly. There's like this he's not going to chat you up as much as John or / the T-3000, but he's still, he's just convincing enough to get in.
Yep, I like that. Continue.
So yeah, I guess that's all my thoughts on Rev 9, but he's definitely one of the pros in my book.
3.
Okay, pro number 3 is the R rating. I thought that I, really didn't care too much so long as the story is good, which, with the previous 2 movies we reviewed, I think the story is pretty good and engaging enough for you to, for the most part, overlook the fact that it's not R rated. But this just felt right, bringing it back.
Felt right at home. Also, I am going to say I'm pretty sure this is the goriest Terminator film of the whole series. Not that there wasn't any, like, this franchise needed over-the-top gore. Like, of course, the T-800's first kill in the first Terminator movie, some dude literally gets impaled on his fist. And when he yanks his arm out, Arnold's arm is literally slathered in red paint. So, of course, that's pretty visceral.
Yeah.
And in T2, there's a couple dudes that get impaled through the eye socket. And in T3, there's that one kill when the TX kills Catherine's husband. I guess she takes a buzzsaw to him, and because there's that quick, like, splash of blood all over a family photo of Catherine and her fiance. But there was never really over the top violence. Like in this movie, The Rev 9 is literally just tearing through people left and right, slicing their arms off, impaling them, cutting a couple people's heads off. It's fucking brutal. It definitely does feel like this right out of Deadpool.
Yeah, I could see that. To your point about T3, there is that one moment which I think was actually one of your favorites in the review you did. Is whenever the TX rams her arm through the cop in the front seat.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Fucking brutal as fuck.
But that was probably definitely the most brutal moment out of that particular movie.
Yeah, I'd say so too.
So it's not as frequent as this one.
No. So yeah, I definitely say this is the goriest of the whole series, which is fine in my book.
Oh yeah, I didn't mind it at all. And also, the R rating helps with the fact that they can,
swear.
Swear, yeah. And it didn't feel too outrageous. It was just like, again, it was almost a...
Because we're not machines, you metal motherfucker. Love it.
Exactly. And it was great hearing, because Sarah has a certain way that she says motherfucker that is, well, I won't say it's iconic, but it's like a...
It's distinctive.
Yeah, it's pleasant to hear it because it's so nasty and passionate the way she says it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think you're probably going to go into that some more, but yeah, it was refreshing to see a proper R-rated Terminator movie again.
4.
All right, pro number 4 and last. I really liked Sarah in this movie.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, it sounds like she's going to factor into your cons a little bit.
No, not at all. Actually, you know what? Let's both talk about this because Sarah is my first pro. Linda Hamilton's great in this movie.
Absolutely.
She is fucking phenomenal in this film. She's as my wife just did. She's mwah. Now, as I've been trying to catch up on the Terminator franchise, she watched Dark Fate with me. And back when I did my, back a few months ago when I was watching all the Terminator movies again, she watched a lot of the first one and she watched bits and pieces of 2 with me. So she's very familiar with all the actresses who play Sarah. And she's also watched a little bit of Sarah Connor Chronicles with me. And as she says, ew, the actress who plays Sarah in Sarah Connor Chronicles is not good at all. She is 100,000% miscast. And as my wife says, Linda Hamilton's a badass bitch. I was really excited to hear that Linda Hamilton was returning, and so much so that my wife got a little bit caught up with the Terminator hype. She and I watched the Snack Wars video that Linda did with Arnold on YouTube, and we must have watched that maybe 20 times. Arnold and Linda are so adorable together, and that
was so fun.
And if you didn't know any better, you'd swear those two were a couple, which they should be. I'm just going to go out there and say it. Yes, they should get married.
So you ship Arnda?
Yes.
Yes.
Arnda.
But yeah, Sarah is awesome. She feels exactly like how she was in T2. Exactly. There's no inconsistency with her portrayal. There's no forced mannerisms. There's no bullshit. You see this and you say, that's Sarah Connor. That is Sarah motherfucking Connor. Damn it. Got that out of my system. That's all I have to say. Linda Hamilton's great in this movie, and it's a shame this movie flopped for many reasons. But go ahead, Trev.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. And along those lines, there's, again, a nice flow to the way she's portrayed in each. If you view this as the proper third movie, we start off with her being the helpless victim, and then she basically has PTSD in Judgment Day.
Yo,
and
it's debatable who has more PTSD, Ripley in Aliens or Sarah in Terminator 2. It's so debatable.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I used to say, and I probably still stand by it, I think I like the way that Ripley handles her trauma more, because something that I feel kind of really services John's character more than it does Sarah's in T2 is the fact that she's a badass, but she's also pretty much over the edge and almost completely insane.
Yeah, she's just like 2 inches away from the brink. Whereas I think I see what you're saying. Whereas Ripley obviously is extremely traumatized and in some ways is very broken, but she still managed to compose herself and slightly move on in the situation, whereas Sarah didn't. Like it traumatized her and spooked her so badly that it did like half break her or 3/4 of the way break her in some ways. But still, whatever, it works.
So yeah, along those lines, Ripley basically internalized her trauma, and Sarah just was letting it all out.
Very external, very, very, very external.
It's because she was so. Yeah, it's because she was so external in expressing it that really it allows John to finally, realize I need to step up and start going down the path of becoming this leader of the future resistance. And, if I can't get people to calm down and get their shit together, then, I'm probably not going to be any good as a leader. So, yeah, with regards to how really the way they approach this movie, and, I think you're going to bring it up when we get to the cons, really, they structured the Terminator movies into the story about Sarah.
That is one minor thing that I have, is that sometimes Sarah feels a little out of place in this film.
Well,
like, it's great that she's back, but sometimes it just goes into the woke agenda, unfortunately.
Well, see, and that's what's works about the the feminist slightly PC thing they were going for is that by making it Sarah's story, it works. And like stuff like killing John, it works if you restructure it to be about Sarah.
But they don't.
Then they kind of go off the deep end with the way they handle the new characters. But, and again, along the lines of how you say that she would you say that she kind of falls into the background a little bit?
Towards, like, the end of the second act and the beginning of the third act, yeah, Sarah does feel a little, like, set on the back burner. But then at the very last minute, she becomes the caregiver of Danny. So you can kind of presume, for the future's sake, that it's from Sarah that Danny learned to become a wannabe badass. And I say wannabe because that's exactly what she is.
Oh, we'll get there.
Yes, we will get there. But still, Linda Hamilton is great in this film.
So one final note on the Sarah and Ripley connection. I really do see a parallel between Terminator, Terminator 2, Terminator Dark Fate, and the first 3 Aliens. Or Alien movies, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the comparison I make. And one final note on the fact that she was sidelined. I guess that's kind of a symptom of the fact that really this is trying to do a Force Awakens or pass the torch kind of deal.
And fails.
Yeah, I'd say it's not anywhere near as successful as that, but that's kind of what they were going for.
Mm-hmm. One last thing I will also say about Sarah is, we'll talk about the big elephant in the room, but I will say she definitely, one of my favorite scenes, despite contextually, it's very painful to watch, but how Sarah conveys like grief is very well done. She's still trying to like keep her walls up and maintain her facade of being a no-nonsense badass, but you can see in her eyes and her facial expressions, she's very much so a person who's still grieving to this day. And it's just very subtle about, like, she's sitting there saying, I don't have any photos. And Danny just, puts her arm or puts her hand on hers, and Sarah grabs her hand and turns away, and she's like,
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I absolutely love that scene.
So yeah, that's all I have to say about Linda. She's great, absolutely great in this movie. And apparently, my next pro is Arnold, and apparently they got along excellently on set for this film.
Which is funny because in the movie, for the most part, till the very end, they hate each other. Well, they don't hate each other. She hates him, but
it's a very antagonistic, hesitant alliance. That's how I describe it.
Which is kind of a repeat of Judgment Day, but it's I don't mind it.
A little bit, yeah. So pro number 2. I'm just gonna jump into my pros. Pro number 2.
She was pro number 1, right?
Linda was pro number 1, yeah.
Yeah, so go right ahead.
Pro number 2 is Arnold. So when he's on screen, Arnold is awesome, of course. Duh. I love how they executed a T-800 unit becoming self-aware. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this YouTuber, Niat with Film Comics Explained. When Terminator...
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Huh?
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Well, he did a lot of Terminator videos when Dark Fate was coming out, and of course, he did a explanation video on the T-800 model. And in one comment he made, Skynet did not intend for the T-800 units to be active for more than a couple decades, because given enough time, one or more of those units may become self-aware and go rogue. That's exactly what happens here.
That's a real good catch. I think that should be spread more around the fandom so they would stop bitching.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I love the concept of the T-800 model becoming self-aware and actually deciding and choosing to be a good guy. I've always loved the concept of killer robots becoming self-aware and realizing that the horrible acts that they've committed are indeed horrible. Thank you. Better, yeah. And I think, he still has to be monotone and he still has to be like deadpan expression, but it's all in his voice and the words that he says, where Carl completely and utterly 100% perfectly shows that he is fully aware of what he's done, and he does truly regret what he has done. Also, part of my skin being shiny. It's fucking 85 degrees right now, so it's very hot. Yeah, Arnold is awesome in this film. Of course, he's still a badass. being a 30-something-year-old T-800 unit, despite the skin being aged, Carl is still a badass. He's the first one to start throwing hand. Well, toward the end of the movie, like when he's helping Sarah and Grace, he's always the first to start throwing hands with the Rev 9, and it's fucking awesome. Even though there's one minor issue that I have is that Arnold does get his ass kicked a little bit too much, but still. And there is one aspect of Arnold that I don't like, but I will get to that when I get to the cons. But Arnold's awesome. This is probably the last time that we will ever see Arnold play the Terminator. But for his final performance, he still gives it his all, and it's still fun to watch.
Hey, can I add something?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, so I feel like the fact that he, for lack of a better term, grew a conscience is basically an extension, again, a development of, in the theatrical version of Judgment Day, he says the more contact he has with humans, the more he learns. And, in the extended or director's cut of that movie, they actually have to, flip his chip over in order for that to happen. But going by the theatrical version, again, that's something that you can point out to people who say that him growing a conscience doesn't make any sense, is because, after he fulfilled his mission to kill John, unfortunately, he
Spoilers.
found his family. Yeah, sorry. I'm sure most everybody's probably heard that.
Yeah, I know, but I'm still trying to be as vague as possible about that.
Scratch that. But yeah, anyway, whenever Carl finds his family, that's the opportunity he gets to be able to learn more about humans is by being with them.
Also, real quick, not to mention, I kind of wish we got more scenes of Carl interacting with Alicia and her son. Because what we do see, I ain't gonna lie, it's kind of sweet.
Oh, definitely.
And it's really cute to see I don't know if it was like a photoshopped image of a young Arnold, or what it was like it was like a CG de-aged version of Arnold, holding little baby Mateo in his arms. That was cute. I wish you could have seen more of that. Factors into another con that I have with this film.
Yeah.
Anyway, so pro number 3 is the soundtrack. Again, not that much to say. This isn't very generic. It's just very derivative of T2, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's more good, but I just kind of gave it away. It is very derivative of T2. Like the main new Terminator theme sounds a lot like the T2 theme. It's just updated to sound more epic and badass, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a lot of...
Go ahead.
There's a lot of familiar music cues from Terminator 2. Like, even though this theme was for the T-1000, you do hear that a couple times for Arnold in this movie. The T-1000 theme, like that droning sound effect that would play whenever the T-1000 is walking around being menacing. You hear that a couple times for the T-800.
That's during the opening scene, I do believe.
It's during the opening scene and when Sarah first see Carl after 23 years.
That actually sounded like the music whenever he stepped off the elevator in Judgment Day to me.
There was that too, but if you listen closely, you can hear the T-1000 theme as well.
I will have to listen again.
It's very subtle, so you're gonna have to like really, really listen to it, but you can hear it. But yeah, there's a lot of T2 music cues throughout this film. which, just kind of goes to show that this movie wears its influence on its sleeves, which is both good and bad. But the score is very, very, very good. It's very epic. It's very action-packed. It's very, it's just very good to listen to. And also, it's very T2 fan-friendly, despite this movie's best intentions.
There was a comment on a YouTube upload of the main theme that said, whenever it really kicks into gear, it hits you like a truck.
Yes. Huh? Oh, okay. So yeah, not much to say except the music. It's really good. It might be honestly my second or third favorite soundtrack of the whole series.
I think it deserves it.
What?
I think it deserves it.
Pro number 4. The action scenes are stellar in this film. Holy shit. This is some good fucking kick-ass sci-fi action. There's explosions. There's shit getting fucked the fuck up. There's blood. There's fire. There's people dying left and right. There's cars getting demolished. Shit gets fucked up, and it is so thrilling to watch. Honestly, one of my favorite actions. My favorite action scene is the final fight between Carl, Grace, Sarah, and the Rev 9. But my second favorite action scene is the highway chase. Never thought I'd ever see somebody use rebar as javelins, but hey, it works and it's awesome.
Good point.
Not much to say again, but the action scenes are stellar, and you can tell that the crew and cast were really giving it their all to make the action scenes look as good as possible, which is great. Let's see. Pro number 5, the R rating. I'll just breeze over this real quick. It's a breath of fresh air. Again, there are good PG-13 rated action movies out there. And there are good gory PG-13 rated films out there. They're kind of few and far between, but there are good ones. But there's just some franchises that just don't work with anything but an R rating. Look at this film's franchise competitor, RoboCop. No matter how much money you throw at a concept, no matter how hard you try, if it starts out R rating and then you try to dilute it down to a PG-13, it's just not going to work no matter how hard you try. And
well, the thing there, sorry to interrupt, but the thing there is that I think they were thinking that RoboCop, is kind of almost a superhero, so it probably would be an easier transition in theory, which that obviously didn't pan out. But anyway, go on.
Maybe, yes, that is true to a certain point, but for me, that's like making Deadpool PG-13. It just doesn't work.
Yeah,
which they did. Mm-hmm. Or it's like making Wolverine PG-13. Like, the best of Wolverine stuff is R-rated. And thankfully, we have Logan, which is the greatest Wolverine movie ever made. But no matter how hard you try, if you have or here's another example. If you make a PG-13 rated Blade movie, it just doesn't work. If you have a character that's firmly rooted in violent and gritty subject matter, if you try to dilute the violence and the grittiness, you take away something that makes it what it is, and you turn it into something that's even more generic.
And then you get Slender Man.
And then you get the Slender Man 2018 movie, which is the worst mainstream film I've ever seen in my life. So the R rating is a very pleasant welcome back to the Terminator franchise. And like I said, I think this is easily the goriest of the entire series. There's puddles of blood all over the place. One thing that I was kind of missing in Terminator Genesis, when when the T-3000 like incorporates its nanites into Carl's artificial flesh, it just kind of turns to dust. Whereas here, the Rev 9 incorporates its liquid metal into Carl's artificial flesh, and when he yanks his arm off, it tears all of his artificial flesh in gory, sludgy awesomeness. And you hear this loud, wet, sloshing sound as he rips his arm away, and it's awesome. And I love the look on Carl's face. It's like when he tears his arm away, he's like, "You motherfucker." So yeah, that's awesome. And so yeah, the R rating, I welcome it back with open arms. It's such a big breath of fresh air into this franchise, and it makes this movie feel like true Terminator once again.
I think the best exception to what you were just talking about might be the first AVP movie, and that's probably up for debate.
Yeah, that's probably the number one greatest exception because the film is still very violent. There's just not that much blood. If you're not counting the digitally enhanced R-rated version, that is. But whatever. And also, AVP was made in a time when PG-13 was not the we want to make money, so neuter it down option. You still had a lot of leniency with the PG-13 rating. And you could get away with a lot more with PG-13 than you can nowadays.
True, and I also read recently that some people were hesitant to let Paul Anderson go full R again because of what happened with Event Horizon. But I don't know if that's confirmed at all, but that's something I read recently.
Anyway, so.
But that's for another day.
Yep. Pro number 6 is also the Rev 9. Rev 9's a total badass. I love the concept of combining an endoskeleton with a liquid metal shell. Because it kind of gives them both combat advantages. You have the indestructible powerhouse that is the endoskeleton, and then you have the quick, agile speedster that is the liquid metal shell. And also you have the advantage of having bladed weapons. And being able to shapeshift and really blend in with the crowd. One thing I like about the bladed weapons is in the detainee center, when the Rev 9 is hugged by a bunch of soldiers, in order to get the soldiers off him, the Rev 9 was like sending out little blades all throughout its body to stab them in random directions. That's a great
tendrils almost.
Yeah, like tendrils almost. Love it. I love that concept. It's a great defense mechanism. And I also love the concept of them being able to split into two different entities. I love that idea. It's like a divide and conquer tactic.
Exactly. I took the words right out of my mouth.
My one minor flaw is, now granted, I know this ties into Legion not being Skynet, but that's something I'm going to say about Legion. Legion may as well be Skynet, but I'll get to that in a minute. I kind of wish that they could have included onboard weaponry aside from bladed weapons with the Rev 9 endoskeleton unit. Like, they could have at least given him like a plasma cannon or some kind of projectile weapon in one of its arms.
Yeah, that's still the best thing about the TX.
Yeah, and I feel like if the TX was able to separate into two different entities, that would be the perfect Terminator unit. You have the best of both worlds. But they don't do that with the Rev 9, so that's why I still say the T-3000 is the most powerful Skynet cyborg. But the Rev 9 is probably third, because I would probably say that the TX could probably easily defeat the Rev 9. That's just me. But anyway.
I'd say that's fair. And also, here's a little tidbit. that Gabriel Luna said about the Rev 9 is that apparently, I forgot which one it is, but one of the two halves is a remote controlled unit. So basically, the actual CPU is in only one of them, and the other, whichever one it is that separates, is the remote control unit.
It's probably the liquid metal shell that's the remote controlled unit. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Because it kind of makes sense to put the CPU in the endoskeleton because the thing is such a tank powerhouse. That's just me. That's just logic to me. And pro number 7 is the special effects. The special effects are stellar. The CG looks very, very, very convincing. The Rev 9 looks great. The CGI de-aging for Eddie Furlong and Linda Hamilton is flawless. Utterly flawless. Kind of seems like 2019 was a big year for CG de-aging actors because you had this, and then you also had Samuel Jackson in Captain Marvel, and I think there was a couple of characters de-aged in Doctor Sleep, and also there was Finn Wolfhard in It Chapter 2 that was also CGI de-aged. That one looked okay in some areas. And yeah, there was a couple moments where it was really noticeable, like his eyes were like a little too anime-ish. But overall, like 2019 was a big year for CG de-aging. Here, I think it's done at its very best. At the very beginning, Sarah Connor looks just like she stepped out of T2. And Eddie Furlong looks like he just stepped out of T2. I don't know if they CG de-aged Arnold for the opening scene, or if they just used like a stunt double or some shit, but that looked good too if it was CG de-aged Arnold.
Actually, on that note, all the actors in that scene are doubles just with the faces put on them.
Oh, okay. So they pulled Crow.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Well, still, it looks great.
It does. I agree.
Yeah, the green screen effects are great. The composite shots look great. The explosions are awesome. The action scenes are very well edited and very well choreographed and very well executed. The special effects are stellar. And they use the $196 million budget very, very, very well. And with all these good things to say about this movie, let's get into the bad. Let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cons as well. I think that's the highest for any Terminator movie. But
which does not bode well.
No. So you can go first, Trev. How many you got?
4, yeah. So basically our numbers match up. Well, I mean, you have 7 for each, and I have 4 for each.
Lay them on me.
All right, so I guess, again, calling back to the Salvation review, we'll get the most petty out of the way, although I think this is still pretty valid. Con number 1, the generic name for the new AI.
Yeah. It just feels like, I mean, I guess it's a little cool because it ties into the concept of there being a legion of Terminator units. But it feels pointless because that's one of my cons too.
Well, I'll put it this way, is that, Legion is a cool name and has been used for a lot of great concepts. But see, that's the thing, is that it's been used for so many concepts, whereas whenever you say Skynet, the first thing people think of is Terminator.
It just kind of blends into the legion of other concepts that are named Legion. See what I did there?
Very good, very good.
Go ahead.
But no, I was actually thinking, I watched Jack, Jackie Boy's review of this, his second review, which was a lot more positive. And he said something about how, he really wants them to play around with the idea of combining making it known that there's all these different timelines and that they could probably blend them somehow. See, that's what I was trying to get at with, it would have been neat if this had been the remnant from Genesis, if that's what became Legion. I don't think it should have been called Legion, but I think that would have been an interesting idea. The problem, though, is how you would explain how this timeline diverges into what we have in Dark Fate. So that's kind of where I left it.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
So yeah, not much else to say about that aside from the fact that it's just too derivative.
Yes.
All right, so con number 2, I said I referred to it as woke, but probably a more appropriate term would be this went a little too PC.
Yeah.
And actually, the thing is that really I try not to get caught up in the whole culture war bullshit.
Neither do I, but sometimes it's warranted.
Yeah, but to be fair, sometimes there are a lot worse examples of this than others. I think a lot of the shows on the CW, like whether they're superhero shows or what have you, they really just beat you over the head with whatever they're trying to push.
Yeah, I can see that.
And in this case, I knew it was coming. And to be honest, I can overall forgive it and enjoy the positive aspects of this movie.
Me too.
But I still rolled my eyes whenever reveals that I saw coming from a mile away popped up.
Yeah, me too. I'll save my thoughts. Ugh.
Yeah, if you're going to get into it, we'll wait till then. But I think we probably all have the same moments. Though I did pick up on a subtle one whenever I was rewatching it earlier today. You know how whenever they first meet Carl, that he tells Grace, his model number and everything, and then he says, "May I ask what you are?" And
no.
Then she says, "No, you may not." I was kind of thinking, is that like did you just assume my gender commentary? It was something like that. Real subtle, but I didn't pick up on it.
I'm really biting my tongue with that, but continue.
So yeah. Anyway, con number 3.
Yeah.
I feel the future Danny is not convincing at all. I don't mind her in the present because it reminds me a lot of how Sarah is through most of the first movie. But Natalia Reyes is not convincing at all as
a wannabe badass.
Yeah, and they braid her hair, but that doesn't do anything to make her come across the way they want her to.
You want to know why they did that? It's because they didn't want to give her facial scars and potentially make her look unattractive but still badass. They wanted to make her look... She's too pretty to be the war-torn leader of the human resistance in a post-apocalypse. I'll save that for when I talk about Danny, but that's all I'm going to say right now.
Yeah, I think that
you look at John from Genesis and basically any adult version of John. He's rugged, he's dirty, he's in his 20s. Yeah, he looks like he's in his late 30s or early 40s or something like that. Especially in in T2 in Genesis, he's got facial scars. He looks rugged. He looks aged. He's rough and gruff. He looks like a war-torn man. All they did to Danny, braid her hair and give her ragtag clothes and give her some nudges on her face, but that's it. She's too clean. She's too perfect. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And what I would have done is I would have got an older actor who looked all those things you just described, because I don't think that she pulls it off for the exact reasons you said. So I think that an older actress is probably what they needed.
Yeah.
Oh, and also bringing back up a small similarity to Salvation that I noticed. They're not. It's just like a barely there. But whenever Danny saves Grace, whenever she's a child, from the thugs, it kind of reminded me a little bit of when Marcus saves Blair in Salvation. Again, it's a very vague similarity, but I did kind of get a deja vu from that.
Very slightly. Very, very slightly.
It's barely there, but it's still, it's still popped up on the radar, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Okay, and last but not least, because I think this is...
Wait. If it's the big elephant in the room, let's save it for when I talk about it, because I want to talk about it at the same time. So is that what it is?
No, I don't think so. Does it involve the death of somebody?
Yes. Yes.
No, it's not that, so I'm going to go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
So, in my opinion, the biggest problem with this movie, aside from what we all already elaborated on, you'll probably mention some more things, is that I feel it's too little, too late. They really wanted this to be viewed as the third movie, and really, that option is there. But regardless, it doesn't erase the fact that everybody's aware that there were 3 other Terminator sequels following Judgment Day.
Well, 4 if you count Sarah Connor Chronicles, but 3 film sequels, yes.
Yes, exactly. So, we're never going to be able to tell. But I do think, had this actually been the first Terminator movie since Judgment Day, it probably would have went over a little bit better. But again, there's some things you're gonna go into one of them, and we already started to go into the PC thing. Those probably would have always been detractors, but I do think, had this been the actual Terminator 3, I think it probably would have been received just a little bit better.
Maybe so, yeah.
And also, I forgot to mention with the history, and I guess I'll bring it up now. Again, I saw this in theaters with my dad, and I asked him what he thought whenever it was over, and he said that I think it's ran its course. So basically, that translated to he would probably be fine if he never saw another Terminator movie.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
It's a big, big shame.
But who knows what the future holds? But,
All right, so let's get into my cons. So, con number 1. This is going to be a little strange because it sort of goes against one of my other cons, but I'll explain it when I get to it. Con number 1, I think this film is a little too short. Actually, now that I think about it, it ties into 2 cons. But I do think this film is a little too short. It's not like it's Like too short as in there's just not enough of the entire movie. This movie's 2 hours and 8 minutes long. It's not exactly a short movie, but I still say that it's too short because of it's trying to copy Terminator 2. That's another con that I have. So I'll talk about my first 3 cons as a group, but these are my first 3 cons. It's too short. It's very derivative of Terminator 2, and also Legion as a like big Thanos level bad guy that Skynet is extremely weak because Legion's presence is not felt, and Legion that has no buildup. Skynet has tons of buildup. Skynet has tons of lore buildup. It's very much so expanded upon in dialogue by the T-800 and Terminator 2. There's tons of stuff that's talked about with Skynet. With Legion, there's nothing. There's no lore. There's no threat. There's no buildup. There's no weight. Legion. That's why I think they really should not have renamed it to Legion. They should have just named it Skynet, because at least if you call it Skynet, you know this stuff already. You know, like you just need to have a couple pieces of dialogue that explains, like even though Judgment Day was postponed in T2, another version of Judgment Day comes around because of this. So you just need to explain a couple things here or there to show how Skynet's still perceived. Or like you could have made this like a follow-up to Genesis, and if you didn't want to call it Skynet, you could have made the remnant of Genesis become Legion. So you could have made this a sequel to Genesis. So, but that still wouldn't have worked because you had the return of Linda Hamilton. But so you could have just renamed Legion to Skynet. So what the point? To me, there is no point of renaming the AI Legion. It makes perfect sense that they would want to create something to create an AI for cyber warfare. So that's what they could have had Skynet become. They could have realized that what they had with Skynet was kind of headed in a bad direction. So they had good intentions with Skynet as a cyber warfare AI, but even no matter their best interests, Skynet still goes self-aware and brings about the apocalypse. And like I said, with just keeping the name Skynet, you wouldn't have to explain all of this new lore. Because without the new lore and without the buildup, it makes Legion have no weight, if that makes any sense at all. So Legion, I think, is just a completely pointless name change. But yeah, like I said, it goes into why I think this movie's too short is because it's really lacking the buildup. One of my favorite scenes of Terminator 2 is after Sarah has been broken out of the mental hospital and they're going to see Enrique. The T-800 is explaining the history of how Skynet really came to be. It's implied in the first Terminator movie how Skynet came to be with very quick dialogue. A defense program that became self-aware and viewed humanity as a threat. There was no explanation as to how Skynet got created and how Skynet evolved into becoming self-aware. That's explained upon in Terminator 2. With Legion, it doesn't have that. It's just said it was a cyber warfare program that became self-aware. That's not enough to give Legion enough weight. So it just doesn't work. Legion has no threat. Like all the future post-apocalyptic scenes, they just look like right out of Terminator 2 with Skynet. That makes any sense at all. So Legion as an antagonistic AI just does not work. They should have just kept the name Skynet because it's just pointless. But yeah, like I said, the film.
One thing in its favor is that it's a lot more efficient. There's only the HKs, Rev 7, which we see in one of the the future scenes, and then there's the Rev 9. So I guess that's working for it.
Maybe so, but again, it just doesn't work.
No, I hear you. I agree.
And then also the third problem I have is that this movie is clearly very much so patterned after T2. Bad Terminator, well, kind of in reverse order. Bad Terminator shows up. Good Terminator shows up. There's a fight where there's the first fight with its reveal. There's the explanation. There's looking for help. There's the second fight. Then there's the final battle. It has a very, very similar basic plot structure from Terminator 2. And also the tone is very similar to Terminator 2. That's not a bad thing, though, because this is set in the classic Terminator timeline. So that at least is good. And also the Rev 9 is very similar to the T-1000. And, of course, you have a T-800 played by Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting against the T-1000 type enemy. So, yeah, this movie is very much so patterned after T2. And while some may not see it as a bad thing, I kind of see it as a mixed opinion, but I still do see it as a little bit of like lazy writing, because some of the stuff does feel very familiar, which is both good and bad. Con number 4 is the lack of Arnold. Now, as awesome as Arnold is in this film, I still do say there's not enough of him. I think it's even worse than Genesis in this film. When he is in the movie, he's badass, and I love watching him. But still, he doesn't have enough screen time, in my opinion, because this is what made Arnold famous. So why have Arnold in a part of a franchise that made Arnold into what he is, and then not have him in a whole lot of it? That may just be like a petty one in my corner because I'm such a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, but still, I do feel like there wasn't enough Arnold. Though again, when he's on screen, he's great. Okay, so con number 5. Grace. Now, I like the concept of having cybernetically enhanced humans fighting against machines. I kind of feel like lack of energy weapons, that's the best way to take them on, is to be kind of part machine yourself. It's kind of like the phrase, fight fire with fire. In order to fight a monster, you got to be a monster. I like that concept. And Grace as a concept is not bad at all. It's her character that I take issue with. She's a man-hater. She is a full-on man-hater. Every male that she comes across in this film, she's very aggressive towards. Every person that she steals clothes from is a man. And every single person that she like knocks out, every man, she aggressively and viciously knocks them out. Like she at least cracks their skull, because she's always smashing their heads against walls or breaking limbs and then smashing their skulls. The only woman that she hits, she just bitch slaps her. This may land me in some hot water, but I really have to say this. Yo, Mackenzie Davis looks like a man.
Yeah, she's very androgynous.
It just kind of makes you think the only reason that she was cast is because they're clearly trying to pattern the having a man save a woman type thing, but they still wanted to have a female actress, but then they just made her look manly. She kind of has a manly voice. She has a very manly demeanor. She talks like a man. She looks like a man. It's not nearly as bad as Abby from The Last of Us 2. Woof. But yeah, Grace is very much so a man hater in this film. And also she's very antagonistic towards Carl. I got, like, I didn't really get the "are you assuming I'm a woman" with "may I ask what model you are." I kind of got her saying "no, you may not," just as her being aggressive towards a man.
I got you.
Because for some reason she doesn't like men. And I kind of like how when, because they establish, I don't like this about the cybernetic aspect. They establish that you can only use your cybernetically enhanced strength for short bursts because it taxes your endurance. Which is fine. Actually, no, that's fine, but they need a cocktail of chemicals to keep them going once they use their cybernetic abilities. That's where I take issue. I just feel like that's lazy. It's like having in Deadpool 2, Cable being only to use his time machine twice in the film. It's like Deadpool says, that's just lazy writing. But I like how when Carl shows up all damaged after getting off the plane, he looks at Grace and says, "You look terrible." Hands her a syringe with all of her cocktail of chemicals, saying, "You left this on the plane." She kind of does appreciate him for doing that and looking out for her. And I remember when I was watching the movie, my most recent rewatching, I couldn't help but say out loud, "See, men can care."
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't like Grace. The biggest aspect, honestly, of her that I really don't like is that why is she so antagonistic towards Sarah? You'd think that she would be grateful because she's a woman, but no, but because you'd think she'd be grateful to have another helping hand. It kind of reminds me of how Sarah is in Genesis. She's so fucking stubborn. Sarah has experience in being the type of person that Danny is, who is a naive victim who needs to be protected. You'd think Grace would see that Sarah, because it's like what Sarah says, why are you helping me? Because I've been her before, and it sucks. Exactly. She has experience with this type of thing. She knows what Danny's going through. And also, not to mention, she can help protect Danny. So why is Grace so nasty towards Sarah the whole movie almost? It just kind of makes me think it's just odd.
She's oddly possessive.
Huh?
She's oddly possessive for some reason.
Yep. Oh, and it's also very obvious she doesn't give a shit about Diego whatsoever. Like she keeps saying, my mission is you, not Diego, you. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
Oh, no, that definitely bugged me, especially as somebody who has sisters. You know, it's nice to, I'm always happy whenever I see that kind of relationship in movies. So it really bugged me that she was so dismissive of him, because he was actually quite helpful up until he got speared.
I got the sense, too, that even if there was a way to help Diego, Grace wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. And, you know, on the note of Grace, what really sucks is that Tim Miller encouraged, you know, have you heard the infamous quote where he said that misogynists should be terrified of her?
No.
That was something that he said during the promotion for this movie. So you can imagine that just stirred the fires of the culture war even more.
Well, people who live in glass houses should not cast stones.
Exactly. Oh, and on a positive note about this, we were talking about how the augmented thing is an interesting concept. I think that complements the efficiency of Legion pretty well, because the Resistance is also, or this version of the Resistance is a lot more effective too.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I do like about Grace is she knows how to fight. She knows how to think on her feet, and she knows how to use impromptu objects as weapons. Who the hell thought of using a car engine part as a shield and 2 blades? Who the hell thinks of using rebar as javelins? Who uses a toolbox as a bludgeon? Grace does.
Yep.
And that's cool. But yeah, I don't like Grace. She's really mean-spirited. She's really aggressive. She sticks out like a sore thumb, and she looks like a man. It just doesn't work.
Again, there's a lot of great Kyle and Marcus parallels here, but she kind of ruins it with the bitchiness.
Yeah, that's another thing, too. She's so fucking bitchy the whole movie. It's really hard to like her.
Yep.
And it's really hard for her death at the end of the film to have any kind of impact, because she spent the entire movie being an unlikable, snobby bitch. Con number 5 is Danny. Now, this is not me. Well, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, no, this is con number 6. Excuse me. Con number 6 is Danny. Now, me saying, so anybody who sees this and tries to say that I'm being racist, no. That's not true. Shut up. That's not true. So don't even go there. I don't like Danny because her character just does not work. Like with how Legion doesn't work as an antagonist because she's given no build-up, or because he's given no build-up and no lore, Danny doesn't work as the future savior of humanity because there's no build-up, there's no lore, and there's no weight behind her being the future savior of humanity. In the first Terminator movie, John is given tons of build-up, tons of character, even though he's not even in the movie. Terminator 2, John's talked about all the time, all the stuff that he's going to do in the future. Even in Terminator 3, I know this isn't in continuity with 3, but still, John is given quite a bit of lore and character in T3 as the future savior of humanity. Also in T2, as a young one, there's still some seeds that are planted with John being the future savior of humanity, meaning showing he knows how to hack a computer. Obviously, you're going up against an artificial intelligent computer program. It kind of helps to be a computer hacker.
Yep.
Danny doesn't work because there is absolutely no lore, there's no buildup, there's no weight. There's also no evidence to show that she's the future savior of humanity. It kind of feels like the filmmakers are saying, she's the future savior of humanity. Why? Because she is. That's why. You can't do it that way. You can't just say somebody is something without explaining or showing why. Kind of feels like the antithesis of not showing and not telling. Show, don't tell can work, but you can't do both, or can't not do both and expect it to work. Not to mention, too, the actress who plays Danny is really bad. A lot of her dialogue is incredibly cringy. Like, both of her big motivational speeches in the film are cringy as fuck.
Fuck fate.
Yeah, and also I was rewatching a quick scene where this is one of my favorite scenes of the film when Sarah sees Carl for the first time after 23 years. She's like saying, "I'll kill this motherfucker." And Danny jumps in and says, "If this man can help us, he's not a man. A Terminator. I don't care what he is." Are you serious? And I saw a comment below that, like I said, timestamp. I don't care what he is. What?
Today's the 14th-year anniversary of Steve Irwin's death.
Is it really?
September 4th, 2006.
Damn, I did not know that. Today is the 14-year anniversary of Steve Irwin, a.k.a. the Crocodile Man's death.
Just sad.
Very sad. I did not know that.
Anyway,
I did not either.
Totally out of left field, but I grew up with the Crocodile Man, for the record. He was awesome.
I love him.
Die.
But anyway, so back on track. I saw a comment saying timestamp. I don't care what he is. Humanity's savior, everybody. Yeah, like what the fuck? You're not going to be cautious with people that you meet that could potentially kill you off. Danny just doesn't work. Character-wise, she doesn't work. Acting-wise, she really doesn't work. Dialogue-wise, she doesn't work. As a fighter, she doesn't work because when she's trying to fight the Rev 9 hand-to-hand, how she swings the shotgun is just so cringy. Danny's just crap. She doesn't work whatsoever as the future savior of humanity. She doesn't work as a character. She doesn't even work well as a concept. She just sucks. And the final, ultimate elephant in the room, the biggest sin that this movie has, the death of John Connor. I heard about it before I watched the movie. But when I watched the movie, it totally took a sledgehammer to my gut. My jaw was agape. My eyes were like fucking saucers. And I was just speechless and numb for a good majority of the rest of the film. The first time I saw this film. Wow. Who the ever living fuck ever thought the death of John Connor, the central character of the entire franchise, aside from Arnold, but that's not the point. Context-wise in the story, John Connor is the center of this film's universe. Or this film franchise's universe. And to kill off John Connor is... Let me give you an example. Oh, okay, I know. Killing off Han Solo. It really feels like a hostile takeover. The new generation is just trying to sweep the old one like completely out of the way into the abyss so that they can force feed our brand new, boring, bland characters. It's also like killing off Iron Man and killing off Black Widow. They're trying to kill off these old generation characters so that they can rush in and shove down our throat these new characters that don't work because they're bland. What made these unlikable, or what made these likable characters likable in the first place is that they had character. They had talented actors behind them. They had work put into them. These new characters, it's just all style and no substance. And killing off John Connor effectively makes all the trials and tribulations that everybody went through in the first two Terminator movies, specifically two, completely moot. It renders them completely moot. And it feels really mean-spirited, and it feels like a hostile takeover. Not to mention, who the fuck likes watching a 12-year-old boy get gunned down with a shotgun? Like, what the fuck? Go ahead, Trev. I know you got something to say.
Oh, well, for one thing, I think you're absolutely right on a lot of that. But you asked who is responsible for making that decision. Can you guess?
Tim Miller?
No, it was actually James Cameron.
What?
Yeah, it was actually James Cameron.
What?
I know, you can't believe it, can you?
What?
And also, since you brought him up, the person who wanted Han Solo killed off was Harrison Ford.
I knew that.
Yeah.
That's been known for years. Hell, he wanted him to die in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to clarify on that bit.
Well, you still can't deny that Han Solo's death in Force Awakens does feel very mean-spirited and feels like it comes completely out of left field.
True, but at least it does leave, I think, the proper emotional impact.
It does, and also in Force Awakens, at least you still have a lot of really good Han Solo action before he dies. Here, he literally dies in the first 4 minutes of the film. What I think they should have done, if they wanted to kill off John, what they should have done, they should have brought Eddie Furlong back as an adult, as a grown-up John Connor. And he could have been the mentor for Dani to teach her how to be the leader of humanity when she grows up and she replaces John. Then, John could have sacrificed himself to make sure that Dani survived.
I like that.
So that's what I think they should have done. But killing off young Eddie Furlong in the beginning 4 minutes of the film really just feels very mean-spirited, pointless, completely out of left field, and like a giant sledgehammer to the gut.
So here's what I compare it to. I already brought up Alien 3.
Killing off Newt.
Yeah, Newt. And to some extent Hicks, but mainly Newt because she's a child. So given that, I mentioned how they want to approach this like the three movies are actually really Sarah's story. And given that, I can kind of give it some leniency, but regardless, just like killing off Newt, that's something that is automatically going to either make people love or hate the movie in most cases.
And with this movie, it's just been nothing but hate, and from myself included. Though, granted, I went into this movie knowing that happens, so it wasn't quite as gut-wrenching as somebody who went into this blind and was not expecting to see that, but it still is incredibly crusty, as my wife would say.
Oh yeah, and the problem is that what they're offering up as the alternative is not, it's not developed enough, or like you said, it just doesn't work.
So yeah, the biggest sin with Terminator Dark Fate is killing off John. And honestly, I really feel like that's what sealed this movie's fate. and gave it a dark fate. So I'm going to wrap up this review. I did not expect this review to be as long as it is. Overall,
So long too.
Terminator Dark Fate is not a bad movie. It is very enjoyable. There are a lot of things to like about this movie, but at the same time, I feel like it is equally good and equally bad. There's an equal amount of things to like, but it's also counterbalanced equally by amount of things to hate.
50-50.
There's very good decisions, and then there's very bad decisions. And it's just misguided. It's just very misguided. The film had good intentions, but it got misguided, and it just didn't work. And unfortunately, it does seem like the Terminator franchise has been terminated. So what are your final thoughts on Dark Fate, Trev?
Well, I mentioned that James Cameron was the mastermind behind that decision. I don't know if it was because he felt they had done too much with John in the 3 movies that he wasn't involved with. And to be fair, everything they did there was probably better than just outright killing him off. But it almost seems like he's being spiteful. It really rubs me the wrong way that he endorsed both this movie with his involvement, and he also did like a little promo for Genesis. But then as soon as they got thrown, well, not thrown on the bus, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. As soon as people tore into them, the movies, he threw the people who made them under the bus. And I find that very treacherous.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And again, you couldn't even believe that he was the one responsible for endorsing the idea to kill John off, because he was the guy who originally killed John. It'd be like if George Lucas was okay with
killing off Darth Vader.
Yeah. I guess that's probably the best comparison to make. And also, real quick, some lingering thoughts on Danny, and I'll probably get in hot water too if I say this. I think probably what hurts her acting is that the actress probably doesn't speak English very well.
No.
I don't know if that factors into it at all. And also, really the only build-up, if you can even call it that, to Danny being a thing is the fact that there are these small hints. Well, really, it starts with the end of the first movie, and then it's a hideout place across the border. What I'm saying is that Mexico is kind of sprinkled throughout these 3 movies until it becomes like the forefront for Dark Fate.
True, yeah.
Yeah, really, that's the only thing that I can see as a quote-unquote build-up. Other than that, there's really nothing to Danny that justifies...
What they could have done to fix Danny's character is if Danny was one of the daughters of Enrique from T2.
Oh, that would have been great. See, why can't they think of stuff like that?
My wife also says one idea they could have done for this film was if they brought John back as a good Terminator for this film. That would have been cool too. You would have really had to work that idea into a certain way to make it work good in the context of the film, but I think that would have been a neat concept.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Yeah, it's very mean-spirited. So yeah, final thoughts on Dark Fate?
Yeah, I think those 2 are probably the good wrap-up. Those 2 thoughts, I mean.
All right. So what's your rating for this film?
It was going to be lower until this recent rewatch, which I actually quite enjoyed, despite the flaws we listed. I would say this is probably a 7.5. I'm going to go with the almost 8 rating. So, yeah, 7.5.
I'm going to give this an 8. Terminator is one of those franchises that no matter what decision is made, it's still Terminator. I love me some Terminator. Kind of like with Tremors, even though part 6 of Tremors gets worse and worse the more I think about it, but it's still Tremors.
We'll get there.
I still love, yeah, we'll get there. I still love it. I will always take some Tremors, and I will always take some Terminator. So I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. It's got a lot of good things going for it, but it's also got a lot of problems. It still is a shame that this seemingly is the one that finally terminated a good franchise. So with all that being said, post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Share this video with your friends. Trev, you got some stuff to plug.
Yes, I do. Well, really, just please come visit thefictosphere.com because I write shit, and that's where you can find it.
Isn't there a new series that you just announced that it's coming soon to Ficto?
Oh, that's right. Actually, it started this week. Apparently, Oktoberfest actually started in September. So my employers, quote unquote, had this idea to make September a Kong-themed month in terms of content. So it's called Kongtober. So we start out with, the original movie and basically that small era of how everything started. And then we work our way through the 9 Kong films.
8. 9 counting Godzilla versus Kong.
That's right. See, I'm thinking ahead. But yeah, anyway, that is the theme for the Fictosphere this month is Kongtober.
Kongtoberfest.
Yeah, Kongtoberfest. And I will be writing an article on the 76 remake during week 3.
All right, so go check that out. Look forward to future reviews. And Trevor will be joining me for a lot more stuff in the coming future. Not for the next couple videos. Not going to say what they are, but yeah, look forward to Trevor showing up more on my show. And as always, go out and watch some Terminator movies. Enjoy the franchise for what it is. And I will see you guys in the next video.
Yeah.